Hello everyone. Now we'll be doing the chapter My Lost Dollar. So many a times in school it happens, all of the friends are sitting together in a circle in the canteen and you just want to have something chilled, maybe some juice or maybe noodles or something like that. And you just ask one of your friends, okay, go get it. And he gets noodles for all of you and juices along with it. And then you think, oh, okay, it's just a juice, it's just, noodles, just one plate of noodles. I don't need to pay him back, he's my close friend, so you just let it be. So maybe, have you thought that maybe he just might be holding a tiny grudge against you for not paying him back and might be even writing down what all money you have taken from him. Such little things in life sometimes count for some people. And this chapter is about one such person, My Lost Dollar. So let's quickly have a look at the summary of the chapter. The author's friend Todd was going for a short stay in Bermuda. Just before his departure, he borrowed $1 from the author to pay off the taxi. When Todd wrote a letter to from Bermuda, the author expected a dollar bill in the envelope. 12 months go by. Todd has returned from Bermuda but has not bothered to return the $1 to the author. The lender is too decent to offend his friend by demanding his dollar back. However, the thought that Todd had borrowed the dollar bothered the author and he made some futile attempts to get back the dollar. First, he went to the railway station to receive Todd when he returned from Bermuda. He found Todd very cheerful but not at all ashamed that he had not returned his loan of $1. Later, during an evening tete-a-tete, the author raised the topic of the American dollar and asked whether it was used in Bermuda too. Todd did not get the hint about the unpaid dollar. So we see here that the author has given his friend Todd, a very close friend of his, $1. $1 does not seem much to Todd, so maybe he does not bother to return it. But in the mind of the author, he must return it. It's a loan that has to be repaid. So what the author does is, he is expecting his dollar back, but he thinks that Todd might have forgotten it. So he tries to remind Todd. So firstly what he does is, he goes to the railway station to receive Todd when he comes back. He thinks that maybe he'll see me and then he'll remember the dollar that I had given him and he would repay me, but that does not happen. So the author again raises the topic of the American dollar during a discussion and asks if it is used where he had gone as well. But this time as well, Todd fails to understand if what the author is actually meaning. So let's continue with the summary. The author met Todd almost daily in the club. However, Todd did not refer about the due dollar. One day, Todd is disapprovingly observed that Poland has defaulted its debts. The author was very much upset that Todd did not consider his unpaid debt. Annoyed at Todd's irresponsible attitude, the author wrote off his loaned dollar and added Todd's name to his list of defaulters of $1 loans. The author, offended and distraught, accepts that forgetting to repay loans was a human frailty. Distressed by the thought that he could have taken such loans and not repaid it. Tormented with guilt, the author desired that his creditors would claim their repayments. Haunted by the disquiet of loan defaults, he wished to initiate a back to honesty campaign. He is persuaded that honesty should be the core of all nations seeking greatness. The author did not desire his forgetful friend to know of the agony he had undergone because of the non-repayment of the debt, and exhorted his readers not to bring the copies of the story to the University Club Montreal patronized by Major Todd. So we see that Todd is a major in the army, so he has no lack of funds. That means that he has actually forgotten to repay the author. Now we see that this one more time, what happens is, Todd is talking about Poland and how it failed to pay its debts. But even now, Todd does not think of the $1 that he has not paid back, while this is all that comes to the author's mind. So we see that the author is very particular about his money and about the loans he gives and about the loans that have to come back to him. because as we see that he even has a list of defaulters. So that makes him a very particular man. So he is very offended, and he thinks that all the nations which want to grow must, must be very honest and repay their loans, otherwise they won't ever be able to grow. He's a very honest man at heart and very morally upright. But we can also say that he is also uptight, as Todd is a very close friend of his, and still he is seeking the $1 bill that he had given him to be repaid. And he even wishes to initiate a back to honesty campaign, which is actually, this makes the story a very light one and a very non-serious story, because this is something that happens to each one of us, maybe every day or maybe rarely, but it happens to each one of us. So this happened to the author, and while we would just let it go because it's just a meager $1, the author took it very seriously. So this was about the story. We also see that in the end, what the author wants from us is that we should not bring the story to the club where Major Todd comes regularly, because he does not want Major Todd to see the story. Why? He is again being the decent and the courteous himself, and he does not want to offend his friend in any manner. So now let's have a look at the question and answers for the chapter. Question 1. Why was the author reluctant to ask Todd to return the amount? Firstly, we know that the author knew that the major had enough funds to give him back the money, but he did not ask him directly. Rather, he just hinted in some scenarios, because he was too courteous and too decent to ask his friend for $1, and yet he was very particular about it. Also, he did not want to offend his friend. Let's just read the answer. The author felt that asking his dear friend Todd for the return of the $1 loan could look mean and greedy. Todd could get offended by such a request, so the author stepped back from making such a request. So these are the major points that you have to put in the answer, and the rest you can elaborate according to the marks. Next question is, why do you think Todd didn't pay back the $1 he owed the author? See, again we know that he had the funds, so most probably he forgot about the $1 bill, right? And secondly, it was just a very small amount to be repaid back. So let us read the answer now. It would be reasonable to assume that Todd had forgotten about the loan. He was a major in the army and was not short of funds. The second assumption is that he felt the bill was too small to be refunded. So these are again the main points for the answer. The next question is, what sort of person the author was? This can also be used as an answer for the character sketch. The author was a man of principle. He was sensitive, courteous, and has a sense of self-respect. Despite his nagging indignation at Todd's failure to return the dollar, the author didn't allow the loss to affect their friendship. While pointing finger at others, he was ready to look within to search his own follies. So basically we see that the author is a very sensitive man, since he does not want to offend Todd, and at the same time he is decent and courteous because he does not ask Todd directly, rather he just hints. But at the same time he is very particular about his loans, about his money. He is morally upright and also a bit uptight. We also see that he has a lot of self-respect, and he is willing to look into his own follies. He even thinks at a point of his own loans. So he is willing to look into his own follies as well. So the author was basically a man of high principles. So you can use this as a character sketch as well. Next question we have, what sort of feeling do you get after reading the story? So when you read the story, you get a feeling of a very light-hearted, non-serious, funny story from the perspective of a person who gives the loans. Most people are people who would take some loans, who would ask their friends to get something for them and not repay them back. But this is from the perspective of a person who has given the loan. So this makes a kind of an interesting read. The story makes excellent reading when one looks for something comical, non-serious and light. It is pure, undiluted fun to see the torment suffered by the author when his friend didn't return the money. The torment was to such an extent that he even thought of a back to honesty campaign. So this was the story, The Lost Dollar.